Hey, this is Paul Solt from Super Easy Apps. I want to show you today how to fix some common beginner mistakes. There's 4 things I want to cover. This is based on a coaching session that I had with one of my students. I want to walk you through some of the changes. So Swift 4 introduces a ton of different changes. And if you've used any of my tutorials on YouTube or my course website, or if you're trying to follow along on Stack Overflow or other tutorials online, there's a lot of code that has changed, and it's hard to get things working if you're just trying to follow along, especially if you have no idea what you're doing, you're just trying to tinker. So let's go ahead, let's look at some things. This is based on a student of mine who typed in this code. They introduced some errors, and I want to show a similar approach. So right away, when I go to build this application, we're going to see a bunch of errors. One of the things that you're going to want to do as a beginner is to start top down and sort of work your way through. And that might jump you around the file. It's also good sometimes to start at the top of the file and work down, but we'll just see what we get to with this approach. We'll just go to whatever's top in this list. So one of the things that has changed is the table view. If you're working with the table view, and a lot of people are working with table views, this has completely changed the API. There's differences here. So when you run this, you click on this error, you're going to see a fix it option. And I want to show you one quick fix. If you know what you're doing, there is a way under editor to fix all issues in scope, but it is grayed out. Well, that's useful. So maybe that doesn't work. So it might be too many issues so that it can't fix them. That's fine. We're going to ignore that option. If that option is not grayed out for you, you can try and fix it. Generally, fixing all of them is not going to help unless you know what you're doing. If you're an experienced Swift developer, you can fix things. But if you're a beginner, you should go one by one, because potentially the original code that you had is going to give you insight into how it should have been fixed or how it should be written. There's a lot that has changed. So the table view methods all have changed, and there's sort of 2 ways to fix this type of issue. For this one, you can go with the fix it, and it should auto insert. It's going to change the code. There's going to be this, and this might change a little bit. The same with this one. We're going to see that this is going to change. Apple's new code style for their APIs has been to remove things that are duplicated. So you're going to see stuff like this getting removed, and this type has changed. So let's see what this can fix for us. We'll go ahead and fix it. This fix is actually not helping us. So this one's going to be a little bit tricky to fix, but then we can go and try the next one. So we're getting closer to where we need to go. We've got a missing argument down here. So that's related to a function that we wrote that has a argument thing. This has changed from Swift 2 to Swift 4. So we'll just hit fix it and see where we go. So I'm going to click on this, and you can see that we're trying to conform to the delegate. And then we're seeing that we've got some weird errors up top. So we have the option to add protocol stubs for the data source, but we also see that we're getting some ambiguous references here. And what is that about? So what has happened, and I know the problem, but it's just this error message doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So we're trying to set up a delegate and a data source, and we don't actually have something called Tableview. And so this is where you need to make sure that you double check your spelling matches your variables. Tableview is used here, but it's actually called the to-do Tableview. And this is a tricky error because the solution isn't obvious. So just make sure that you can copy this. You can just double click, press Command C, and then double click Command V to paste it, or you can type it again. Again, typing is case sensitive. So if I leave it like this, we're going to have another issue because I've typed it wrong. Xcode might pick up on that. They might recommend a fix, and the fix was just there and then it disappeared. There we go. So it's telling us to fix it to the uppercase. So we are doing Camelcase. That is where we have a lowercase first letter, uppercase for the following words. Capital case is used for class names. And so you'll see that along the top. You'll see the modules use it as well as our class and these other things. Our protocols are going to use the uppercase. So that's the capital case we use for those. But for variables, we like to use Camelcase. And if you've written it up top right here, like you've written it down here, then it's good to make sure that they match. And there is, if I can get this, you can start to see like all the related ones in the area. If you just highlight, all you have to do is highlight, and it should highlight, but I'm not seeing it do that. It could be because there's code errors. Okay, so we fixed that, and now we have another error, and this is the UITableView has no member data source. So again, capitals matter. We have a lowercase s here, and so this is what the student had, and this is what was causing some of the problems. So now we fixed that. This should go from like the black to a bluish color, or whatever the font you have. It should look similar to the top one, and that's sort of an indication that you're doing it right or wrong, and the error message should go away. So we fixed that. And now what we're having is the view controller does not conform to the protocol data source. So what this is telling me is that the candidate has a non-matching type, and I can fix it. And if we go to fix, we can see what that does. And that takes us down here. So we're going to look at these two table view methods. These are the most common methods that you're going to have. That fix did something, but it didn't do enough. So now we're going to see another fix it. So I'm just going to go with this one. This should be the right type of fix. So I'll just hit fix. And the other issue is when I had done the fix before, I inserted this code. I don't need this. What has happened is the NS index path has changed to just index path in Swift 4 with iOS. So we can get rid of this because that wasn't really solving the real problem. So if we go ahead and build, that should solve a lot of our issues, and I think it will work now. I will go ahead and hit the play button. A lot of times what you're going to do when you're working on this is you're going to do Command B to just do a sanity check to make sure things work. And so here we have an issue. So you might run into this issue as well. Swift 2, if you follow along and you're updating an old project, this is going to be a problem. If you're following along, the new code gets automatically inserted correctly. So we need to open up our view controller to fix this issue. This is something that you can have anytime you rename a property. So if you rename one of your IB outlets or IB actions, you can see this type of crash. So we see this crash, we need to fix it. The fix I know is going to be related to the storyboard and the code file. And what I want to show you is the actual error. So let's make the error in the bottom bigger. You need to make sure that this is enabled. And then we're going to see what's here. Along the bottom, we're going to see what we call a stack frame. This is generally not useful for us. Most of the time, it's the message that's right above it that's really important. And here, we see that we have a crash. Oh, and this is actually, I didn't realize this one was going to happen, but this is one of the issues that we had in our little chat today. And what we have is the DQ cell with a cell identifier must register nib class, and it should give us a name. So this is the name, and it's saying that it's not registered. And so what happens is this is an instance where we need the code and the UI to match exactly. And so we come into our UI, where you have a table view, you should see this panel on the left. If you don't, click this little button to show it, and you're going to look for the table view and then the cell. This is a prototype cell, and if we click on it just once, that should select it. But if you can't exactly get to it because you've got a complex cell, just click on this row on the left. And now what we need is the side panel on the right. And once we do that, what we're going to want to do is we want a code convention. I would recommend that you use Camelcase for all identifiers. So in a storyboard file, instead of writing cell with a lowercase c, you're going to write it with a capital C. And that needs to match the code. So if this one's called cell, or if this is going to be like something related to your content, like if this is a to-do cell, we're going to write, let's go ahead and call this to-do cell. Press enter. We're going to now see that this changed to to-do cell. So that's an indication that you can look for this. And if you see a lowercase t or c, that's an indication that you need to fix something. Then what we're going to do is come back over to our view controller.swift, where we have this identifier, this DQ reusable cell. This is important that this matches exactly with the storyboard file or the things do not connect. So we called it to-do cell, and let's just double check. That's to-do cell. We go back to our storyboard file, and we see that it is to do cell. So let's go ahead and run. We should be able to get a step further. Okay, so now we have cells, we have some to-do items. I've added 2 recently, and we need to test some of the buttons. Okay, so I test the add button, and all of a sudden we have another crash. So this is an issue that you might see if you're upgrading an old project. If you're working with a new project, you're not going to necessarily see this. Again, we'll scroll up to the top of the stack frame. We'll look at the very first message. We're going to see this. We're going to see 2 messages here. We've got the add button pressed, unrecognized selector, and then this is why it crashed. So it's just saying we crashed because of this issue right here. So we're going to see a little Objective-C code because the selector stuff, when you hook up the UI, actually is leveraging Objective-C, not Swift. And so it's going to look a little bit funky. You're going to see this dash and then open square brackets. So that's going to be an indication that that's the case. It's saying add button pressed. Now, this looks correct, except it's not, because this has changed slightly with Swift 3 and Swift 4. And since I'm upgrading a Swift 2 project, it has not been updated for that. So what we're going to look for is this add button pressed. The key to fixing this is to copy this, Command-C, and then do Command-Shift-F for search. That'll put you in this search box so you can just paste it in, and you can just type it and press Enter. Alternatively, you can just click on this little search icon and click here. But Command-Shift-F will take us right there, and we can just type whatever, paste whatever, press Enter. That's going to speed up development. So you're going to click on this, and so this has no connection. And if we go back to our assistant editor, we're going to have to find this and edit it. So let's go back to our storyboard and then switch over to our assistant editor. Once we're in this view, we're going to look at our buttons. Now, I fixed one of these buttons, but I didn't fix the other one. So the search button is fixed, and if it is fixed, you should see that it highlights when I hover over this little dot. That means it's connected. When I hover over this, it's not connected. We need to connect it to something. The problem is we have to fix a bad connection, or we have to update the code, and the code has changed. So we're going to have to do one or the other. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click and drag and insert this as an action. So make sure you select action, and we're just going to type the same thing, add button pressed. Press enter. That's going to insert it. Now what we're going to see if we hide some of these panels is that this is slightly different. There's now an underscore at the start, and it's the any instead of any object. So what we can do is we can just get rid of the old, which are these 2 lines. I'm just going to select both of them and press delete, and then we can save the project. And now we can see that the 2 buttons are connected to UI. So when I hover, it shows up that this is the connection. If you ever need to modify these connections, you can always just remove them and then re-add them. So if this is a problem and it's crashing because of it, you just hit the mark and then you can reconnect it. So this happens anytime you rename something. So if we called it button 2 pressed and we tried to build it and run it, what we're going to see is that it's going to not do what we want. So it's going to crash again. We're going to see this crash into a SIG abort in our main app delegate method, but that's not super helpful. We have to jump back and we have to look at how it's connected. So this is our sent action. And if we pull open the side panel, I'll show you one more trick for looking at this. So we click on the button to select it, and we go over to our button over here. This is the connections inspector. We'll see that this is connected to add button pressed. If add buttons pressed does not exist over on the right in our code file, it doesn't because I've just renamed it add button 2 pressed, then it's not going to work. So what we need to do is we need to remove that connection and re-add it. So if you want to do that, you can do that, or you can fix the name. So we can reconnect it to this one. The problem, if we reconnect, sometimes we can have multiple sent actions. So you just need to double check that it's using the right one. Now I'm going to make this go back. So try this, but I'm going to make this go back to just add button press. That means I have to fix this connection again. And it looks like Xcode might be smart and it's just replacing it. In the past, you've been able to like stack up multiple button presses, which has been really confusing when you have one button doing 2 actions. So that's a little bit about fixing this. Just to recap, Swift 4 changes a lot of code, so use the fix-its. Sometimes the fix-its, most of the time, they're helpful in Xcode 9. Apple recommends that you go down to Xcode 8 to convert. I don't know if I would recommend that. I still have not done that. I've downloaded it in case I need to get to it, but it's not something that is necessarily going to help me. If you need to download Xcode 8 because you got a big project, you can go to download/more. If you go to developer.apple.download/more, you can find Xcode 8 down in this list, and you want the 8.3.3. But I haven't even installed it. It's a 4 gigabyte download. I would recommend just fixing the issues here. So I fixed the issues. So if we stop and run, we should be able to press the plus and the search buttons and things should work. Double check your spelling matches. So to do table view, not table view. And I know this can be confusing because other methods in here, which you still might not understand fully, have a table view attribute. And so you might use that instead of the to do table view. So if that's the case, just make sure that you're using the right one. The attribute in here is whatever table view is responding. Sometimes you might have two table views on a single screen. This might be an iPad app. And so if that's the case, you need to be able to distinguish between the two. And that's why it's sort of passed in as a parameter. And that's why I'm storing it at the top so that we can know which table view is being affected. The other thing is case sensitive. So it's data source with a capital S, not a lowercase s. And just be mindful of that. And the IB actions are something that can go wrong that causes instant crashes when either you boot up the app, if it's a table view app, or when you click a button and cause an action. So just be on the search for that. And I think that really covers some of these beginner issues that you might run into. If you have any other questions, let me know. And there should be links to download this code down below the video. All right. I hope you have a great day.